Hey readers, so we're going to pick up at chapter 14, Bran's chapter, which we know Steve and Topher just got onto the bus. Topher has, even though he's nervous and says he's going to tell his parents the truth if they ask about his lip, he's going to be honest. He tells Topher he had a good day. Now let's start with Bran. Margaret Eleanor Bixby. So we never knew her full name before. Margaret Eleanor Bixby died in Boston at the age of 35. She never told the class her full name because she said it sounded too much like a Beatles song. She didn't want to give kids any more ammunition for bathroom stall graffiti. But she told me once while we were waiting in line to check out. She died of complications from surgery, resulting in traumatic blood loss during an attempt to remove one of the tumors that had laid siege to her pancreas. The doctors at Massachusetts General did everything they could, and she fought to the very last moment, but the odds were against her. Steve could tell me what they were if I really wanted to know, but I really don't. Her soul made its return trip sometime on Friday afternoon in the middle of June. That's what the obituary said, at least. The day she died, Principal McNair called it all the families of all her former students for the last 5 years, something like 130 kids, to deliver the news personally. I have no idea where I was on the list. I know that my father answered the phone, and that instead of calling me out of my room like he normally would, he actually stood up on his walker, came and knocked on my door. It was a scorching summer day, mid-90s and humid. Steve, Topher, and I had pledged to spend the majority of it inside, hands permanently attached to our Xbox controllers. Dad knocked softly 3 times and waited to whisper the news in my ear. I turned to face the other two, but they already knew without my saying a word. They could see it. Steve closed his eyes and whispered something. Topher just looked at his shoelaces. I thought about saying something, but sometimes silence is best. Instead, I just sat down at the edge of my bed and stared at the wall, at this one perfectly blank white spot, and thought about Mr. Allender's riddle, the one that never got its answer. Then Topher bumped me with his shoulder. "Atticus Finch," he said, and pointed to the quote on my wall, the one I'd painted above my bed the day after my dad got out of the hospital the second time around. I nodded. This wasn't goodbye. We had already said our goodbyes. That night, my dad ordered pizza for the 4 of us, and then agreed to our request to go out for dessert in honor of Miss Bixby. Though I'm sure he thought that was a strange way to honor her. He said we could choose the place, provided that we didn't have to drive too far. He still wasn't completely comfortable behind the wheel. Using his hands to accelerate and brake felt like a pilot in a spaceship. He said, "So where to?" So now we know that Dad actually is getting up, driving, doing all these things he wasn't before. Topher, Steve, and I just looked at each other. I told him he should bring a little extra cash from the bread box, because the place we were going wasn't cheap, but it was totally worth it. I think you guys can predict or infer where they went. Somewhere not cheap, so probably Michelle's. And after, there was something at the bookstore down the street that I wanted him to see. So I'll let you guys guess what that might be. Live every day as if it were your last. That's a Bixbyism for sure. Though even she would tell you that it's impossible. It's just way too much to ask most of the time. I've experienced one last day in my life, and it was enough to hold me for a while. The whole truth is, that it's not the last day that matters most. It's the ones in between, the ones you get the chance to look back on. They're the carnation days. They may not stand out the most at first, but they stay with you the longest. Like the first April day you wake up to find a pile of rubber dog poop on your pillow. Or the day you finally get permission to have your 2 best friends over to your house. Or when Mindy Winkler slips you a note in class, for real this time, asking if you will sit by her at lunch. Or the day your 6th grade teacher rescues you from the snow on your way to the grocery store. Or the day your father knocks on your bedroom door and for the first time in 2 years asks you if you'd like to take a walk. Alright, so I'm going to pause for the next chapter. Actually, it's not too long. But I'll pause and break it apart. So we know that Bran's dad is making some recovery and the friends are hanging out. It's summertime. And this last chapter is called an epilogue, and it's by Topher. And epilogues usually are how we end a story.